When we talk about discipline, most people think it's about what you do in the toughest moments. Pushing through pain, grinding through long nights, resisting temptation. But that's not where discipline truly begins. Discipline starts in the small, yet seemingly insignificant choices you make the second you wake up. That first decision, the one between reaching for your phone or reaching for your focus, that's the beginning of a pattern. And patterns are everything. They become neural pathways, hardwired habits, and over time identity. Now, the brain is constantly scanning for cues. It's asking what matters to you. What do you respond to? What do you reinforce? And when the first thing you do every morning is flood your brain with stimulation, notifications, scrolling, noise, what you're really doing is training your mind to expect distraction, to chase novelty, to outsource your state to external triggers. You're not setting your mind up for clarity or direction. You're conditioning it to react instead of lead. But there's another path, a quieter, stronger one. When you wake up and resist that default pull, when you choose to start your day with presence instead of noise, you send a very different message to your nervous system. You're telling it, I'm in control. I choose how I enter this day. That simple habit, done consistently, literally shifts the balance of power in your brain from reactivity to agency. Neurologically, what's happening is powerful, modulating. When you avoid the dopamine hit that comes from checking your phone or inbox, you're disrupting the fast reward loop. Instead of handing control to the limbic system, the part of your brain that craves instant gratification, you're strengthening the prefrontal cortex. That's the part responsible for long-term thinking, decision-making, and discipline. You're not just avoiding distraction, you're building structure at the neural level. You're hardwiring clarity, and the effect is cumulative. You do this every day, 10 days, 20, 30, and you'll notice a shift. You'll stop being dragged around by the world. You'll stop leaking energy to meaningless inputs. You'll move through your day with more clarity, not because you forced it, but because you built it. One decision at a time, powerfully modulating one intentional morning at a time. The truth is your morning is a mirror of your mind. If you begin the day scattered, everything that follows becomes a reaction. But if you begin with discipline, with awareness, everything that follows is grounded in choice. That's the foundation of mental strength. It's not magic. It's not willpower. It's structure. And when that structure becomes a habit, you don't have to chase discipline anymore. You become it. That's how it starts, not with motivation, not with hype, but with one quiet act of self-respect at the beginning of the day. There's something most people don't fully understand about motivation. They think it's supposed to be there before the action, that they need to feel ready, excited, fired up. But that's backwards. The brain doesn't work like that. Motivation isn't a starting point. It's a result. It comes after you take the action, not before. And the reason most people stay stuck in cycles of procrastination or burnout is because they've misunderstood the way dopamine, your brain's reward chemical, is meant to work. See, dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about drive. It's the molecule that signals pursuit. But when it gets hijacked by constant stimulation, social media, sugar, endless scrolling, it creates a loop that burns fast and crashes hard. Your baseline levels drop, and suddenly the things that used to give you energy, focus, purpose, they feel flat. You're not broken. Your brain's just been conditioned to expect easy rewards. And the problem with easy rewards is that they train your nervous system to only act when something feels good. Discipline can't survive in that environment. What rewires the system is this: you have to start linking dopamine to the process, not the outcome. You train your brain to release that chemical not when you finish something, not when you hit the goal, but when you're in the middle of the hard thing. That shift is everything, because if your reward system lights up during effort, not after it, you stop needing perfect conditions. You stop waiting to feel like it. The work F becomes the reward. So how do you actually do that? You delay gratification with intention. You do the thing, then you allow the reward. You don't watch the show before the workout. You don't scroll before you've written the page. You don't open that app until you've locked in an hour of deep work. And more importantly, while you're doing the work, You remind yourself, this is where the reward lies. This is where I train my brain to fire dopamine, not at the finish line, but here in the grind. And it's not just mental, it's biological. You're literally rewiring the synapses. Every time you link pleasure to progress, your brain says, this matters. Over time, the circuits strengthen. You start to crave the challenge, not avoid it. You start to seek effort, not escape it. You're no longer a slave to the highs and lows. You're in control of the chemistry. And here's what's wild once you build this habit. The very things you used to resist, the workout, the writing, the study, the routine, they become your fuel because your brain now believes effort equals meaning. You don't need hacks, tricks, or hype. You've conditioned a higher standard. That's the secret to unstoppable discipline, not avoiding dopamine, but mastering it. Most people avoid discomfort like it's the enemy. They run from it, numb it, try to eliminate it from their lives entirely. But the truth is, discomfort is not the enemy of discipline. It's the forge that builds it. If you want to rewire your brain for unshakable control, you can't just wait for the hard moments to test you. You have to others train for them. You have to deliberately put yourself in controlled discomfort so that when life pushes, you don't collapse, you respond. Your nervous system learns through exposure. It learns how to regulate itself, not by avoiding stress, but by being gently pushed into it and realizing it can handle it. That's where real resilience is born, not in theory, in practice, in cold and heat, in fatigue, in resistance. You put your body under stress and your brain adapts. It gets stronger, faster, calmer. The circuits that scream, escape, get quieter, and the ones that say, hold the line, get louder. That's why something as simple as cold exposure, a cold shower, an icy face dunk, a few minutes in freezing water can be such a powerful tool. It's not about toughness or proving something. It's about triggering a physiological response and staying present with it. That moment when your body says, get out, and your mind says, stay in. That gap, that's where discipline lives. You stay, you breathe, you own it. And in doing that, you're wiring the brain to stop panicking and stress and start adapting to it. Now, this doesn't just apply to cold. You can build this habit with anything that creates a controlled challenge, a hard workout, breath holding, fasting, intense stillness, or doing something you've been avoiding. The key is that it pushes you just enough to activate stress without overwhelming you. Because when you hit that threshold and learn to stay grounded, you're training your prefrontal cortex, the seat of self-control, to stay online even when the body is screaming. And here's what's incredible. The more often you expose yourself to these moments, the more your brain normalizes effort. What used to feel like chaos becomes calm. What used to make you fold becomes familiar. You're not reacting anymore. You're choosing, and that's the real transformation, not just the physical benefits, but the psychological shift that says, I don't avoid hard things. I do them on purpose. This daily dose of discomfort becomes a ritual, not for suffering, but for sharpening. It becomes a reminder that you are not soft. You are not fragile. You are not a victim of your feelings. You're building the neurological framework to handle anything. Pressure, rejection, setbacks, even your own inner resistance. Because if you can step into discomfort willingly every day, you're not just building tolerance. You're building proof that you are the kind of person who doesn't back down when things get hard. One of the most overlooked aspects of building discipline isn't hidden deep inside your brain. It's right in front of you. It's your environment, what you surround yourself with, what you allow into your visual field, what you see day in and day out. All of it is speaking to your brain, even when you're not conscious of it. Most people think discipline is about sheer willpower, but they're fighting battles in environments designed for distraction. That's not weakness. That's poor strategy. Your brain is a pattern detecting machine. It looks for cues. It wants to know what matters, where to focus, how to prioritize. And if you're waking up to clutter, noise, chaotic energy, and scattered signals, you're sending a very clear message to your nervous system. There is no order here. There is no direction. So the brain mirrors that. It becomes scattered. It becomes reactive. It starts bouncing between inputs like a pinball, not because you lack discipline, but because you never gave it a stable ground to operate from. Now, imagine the opposite. You walk into a space where everything has intention. The desk is clear. The phone is not in sight. There's a notebook open to your goals. There's light, natural light. There's structure. In that space, your brain doesn't have to spend energy filtering out distractions. It doesn't have to fight. It locks in because the external world is aligned with the internal one you're trying to build. That alignment is the key. When your environment reflects your values, discipline becomes a natural extension of your surroundings. And this goes beyond cleanliness. It's not just about being neat. It's about being intentional. What do you keep visible? Is it your phone or your journal? Is it reminders of what you haven't done or visuals of the person you're becoming? Every object you see is either anchoring you to who you are or who you were. The more deliberate you become about what you place in your field of view, the more control you begin to assert over your own mind. Even things like lighting, color, layout, they all impact energy and focus. Dim, cluttered rooms suppress alertness. Natural light, open spaces, purposeful design, they activate alert systems in the brain. It's not fluff. It's neurobiology. You are literally shaping your brain's operating conditions based on what you place around it. So this is what you do, you audit. You look around and ask, does this space promote who I'm trying to become? Or does it tempt me to drift? You don't need to have a massive transformation, just a few deliberate changes. Remove what pulls you down, add what lifts you up, make your goals visual, make your distractions invisible. Turn your space into a silent coach. Because discipline isn't just built in your head, it's built in your surroundings. And when your environment stops competing with your focus and starts supporting it, that's when everything begins to change. Most people spend their entire day in constant motion, physically, mentally, emotionally, but they never stop to ask who's really in charge. They're reacting to everything: messages, emotions, worries, impulses. And what they don't realize is that underneath all of that movement is a story running on loop, a narrative. And that story controls how they think, how they feel, and how they act. If you want real, lasting discipline, you've got to learn to interrupt that story. You've got to master stillness. Now, I'm not talking about stillness as in sitting and doing nothing. I'm talking about mental stillness, the ability to observe your own mind without immediately reacting to it. That's power. That's where control lives. Because when you're stuck in your head, just believing every thought that pops up, you're not running your brain. Your brain is running you. And the part doing most of the talking, it's the one that doubts, hesitates, judges, and plays small. The truth is, the human brain defaults to chatter when it's left unchecked. It replays the past, anticipates the future, imagines worst case scenarios. This loop creates stress, drains focus, and sabotages discipline. And the only way to break that loop is through intentional stillness. Whether that's a breathwork practice, 5 minutes of mindful silence, or simply learning to sit with yourself without needing to fix, scroll, or escape, that's where the rewiring begins. You're creating space between stimulus and response. Instead of being pulled around by every emotion, you learn to notice it, label it, and let it pass. That's not a weakness. That's elite level control. That's you stepping into the driver's seat and saying, this thought doesn't define me. This feeling doesn't control me. I choose how I respond. And every time you do that, every time you slow down and create space, you're carving new neural pathways. You're strengthening the parts of your brain that are built for focus, intention, and emotional regulation. And something shifts when you make this a daily practice. You stop needing external structure to feel in control. You've become the structure. You stop reacting to chaos and you start creating calm. Even when things get hard, even when the pressure is on, you're not looking outside for discipline. You're building it from within. The most powerful people aren't the ones who never feel stressed or distracted. They're the ones who've trained themselves to stay centered in the storm. They've made peace with stillness. They've made it a daily ritual, not to escape, but to sharpen. Because in those quiet moments, that's where clarity lives. That's where you remind yourself who you are and what you're building. That's where discipline becomes identity. Because if you can learn to sit with your mind without needing to escape it, then there's nothing the world can throw at you that you won't be ready for. There's a moment that separates people who talk about discipline from those who actually live it. And it's the moment when something gets hard, uncomfortable, or just boring, and you decide whether or not to finish. That decision right there is more than a choice. It's a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Because the truth is, discipline isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the micro decisions you make every single day, and finishing what you start is one of the most powerful of them all. When you start a task and don't complete it, your brain registers that as an open loop, a kind of cognitive tension. And if you leave too many loops open over time, your brain starts to normalize the idea that incomplete is acceptable. You start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't follow through. That subtle identity begins to chip away at your self-trust. And self-trust is everything when it comes to discipline. Without it, you hesitate, you second guess, you stall out. But when you become the person who finishes, even the small things, you're building the opposite signal. You're telling your brain, I do what I say I'm going to do, and this doesn't mean you have to finish everything perfectly. It just means you finish. You don't walk away in the middle. You don't disappear when the emotion fades. You commit to the completion, not for the outcome, but for the wiring. Because every time you cross that finish line, no matter how small, you're reinforcing a loop in the brain task, a effort, pay completion, gay identity. The more times you run that loop, the deeper it imprints. It becomes automatic. You start doing hard things not because they're fun, but because they're part of who you are. This is where most people get it wrong. They think discipline is about pushing through massive goals. But those goals are just the horizon. The real training happens in the little things. Do you clean up after yourself? Do you respond when you say you will? Do you finish the final rep, the last paragraph, the uncomfortable conversation? That's where it all compounds. Stack enough of those moments and you build momentum, and momentum is sacred because when you have it, discipline feels natural. You don't have to force it. You ride it. You also create something deeper, proof. Proof that your words mean something. Proof that your effort matters. And your brain watches that. It says, okay, we finish things now. We follow through now. That belief becomes embedded. And over time, it reshapes how you approach everything. Work, relationships, health, purpose. You're no longer driven by how you feel in the moment. You're guided by the identity you've built through action. So don't underestimate the power of finishing. Start small, finish often, let that be your edge, because the strongest version of you is on the other side of everything you said you'd do and actually did.